And now, the general weather around Alaska.
Welcome to Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service in Alaska region on this Wednesday, May 15th, 2024. And if you'd like additional weather information on top of what you get in this YouTube video, go to weather.gov. It brings you to a map of the continental U.S. And if you point and click anywhere within this map, it'll bring up a localized forecast with any relevant watches, warnings, or advisories. Hawaii and Alaska are to the lower left. In fact, Hawaii has flood watches in effect for the islands as the result of a Kona low that could bring heavy rainfall and localized areas of flash flooding. Speaking of flooding, flood watches here. Potential for flash flooding East Texas, Louisiana into Mississippi. 2 to 5 inches of rain with locally higher amounts as thunderstorms, some of them severe, will have heavy rainfall. We also have severe thunderstorm watches for parts of the Carolinas and back here through southern Kansas, the Oklahoma-Texas panhandle. Here in Alaska, we've had a pretty potent front come into the west coast of the mainland with wind, snow, and blowing snow. I'll show you the current advisories that remain in effect. In some cases, they've had some blizzard conditions. There was a report earlier today, this morning, of some minor potentially coastal flooding and some snowmelt flooding inside of Toksook Bay around the small community of Nightmute. Nothing major, but some minor flooding reported there, and conditions should begin to improve with the fact the winds will not be quite as strong as we go through the rest of the night. They'll actually come down a bit. And then there's uncertainty with the river breakup. We've had now much of the upper and middle Yukon breakup as far as ice jam flooding is concerned, as well as the Kuskokwim, but now the lower Yukon turn, and it's been such a cold spring there across the lower Yukon that there's still plenty of ice in place along the river, so there's still that potential for ice jam flooding. The only issue is that with this front that's come through, it's kind of prevented the surveillance flights to monitor what the ice conditions are like, so that's going to be put on hold at least today and into tomorrow. Perhaps we'll get an opening here or there between now and Saturday. And then the other area of concern, several days away, but say about another week from now, snowmelt flooding could become a problem on the upper Yukon as some heavy snowmelt runoff comes down the Porcupine River from Canada up around Old Crow, and that could impact the communities on the upper Yukon, especially as you get toward Fort Yukon in another week. So quick check of some of the FAA webcams this Wednesday early afternoon. Whales, snow and blowing snow. Temperature did come up, though, to 32 degrees. Imanik, cloudy and windy, 34. Still plenty of ice there in the lower Yukon Delta on the river. Toksook, light fog and breezy conditions, 34. And as I mentioned, it's very flat, boggy area, and as a result there's been some snowmelt that's occurred that could also contribute to some minor flooding, as well as a push of water there and into the bay. Fort Yukon enjoying partly cloudy skies, temperature lower 60s, but those warmer temperatures there across the Yukon Flats and going up the Porcupine River into the Yukon Territory could lead to some heavier snowmelt that could possibly create some flooding here several days from now. So stay tuned. Those of you up there around Fort Yukon, stay tuned to later forecasts. So here are the current weather-related advisories and warnings. We have blizzard warnings for the western northern Seward Peninsula, including Steller, Whale, Shishmaref, Port Clarence until 6 o'clock this Wednesday evening. We have winter weather advisory for some snow and blowing snow for the interior here of the Seward Peninsula. High wind warning, Kotzebue on up toward Kivalina for strong winds associated with the front that's pushing through there. Winter weather advisory, the Noatak Valley, including Noatak, Red Dog Mine. And then we have this blizzard warning, Point Hope to Point Lay until early on Thursday morning as a result of this system working its way up through the Chukchi Sea, Bering Strait, and pushing inland. A quick check of the river breakup map. At this time, there are no flood-related watches, warnings, or advisories in effect in the state of Alaska. We have quite a bit of open water now along the upper Yukon and other significant rivers like the Tanana and the Kuskokwim, but we still have ice down here around the lower Yukon that could potentially create a problem for some ice jam formation and ice jam flooding. Still uncertain how that's going to play out, and we have Some ice here up on the upper Porcupine River, plenty of snowpack in this region, so that could come down, melt down the Porcupine River here within the next week or so and cause potentially some flooding around Fort Yukon, so stay tuned to later forecasts there. The Sag River and other North Slope rivers still have plenty of ice, but those typically don't have any issues until we get into June, so there's at least a little time on our hands there to monitor that situation. On top of that is river breakup season starts to near its end. We also have the fire danger beginning to creep up. Now we are in fire season, but and there have been a few fires, but nothing notable yet. But we find the grass aggregate at this time to be more pronounced here. Areas of the Yukon Flats around the Alaska Range, either side there. No major issues right now, but that will be something we'll be keeping an eye on as we get further into the late spring, early summer, and we start to get drier, warmer temperatures with some breezy conditions and or thunderstorms. But looking at the weather satellite map this afternoon, here's the low over eastern Russia. You can see it wound up. There's actually two centers. And then we have this front that's pushing into the western mainland, and it is this system that has brought the various warnings and advisories to portions of the west coast. This system will continue to lift northward up into across the Chukchi Sea in the Arctic Ocean, just east of Wrangel Island. We've had a weak low here in the Gulf that's going to continue to push eastward. And as we look at the weather map this afternoon, so here's this front. It'll weaken as it works its way inland overnight and on Thursday. Couple of weak lows, one south of Haida Gwaii, another one just off the Panhandle coast, keeping a few showers going. Weak trough across the interior of northwest Canada into the Alaska mainland. And then late tonight into early Thursday morning, we have a ridge of high pressure nudging up into the Gulf, which will get the eastern mainland generally dry. Secondary weak low tries to form around the Alaska Peninsula here prior to daybreak early on Thursday morning, with the other low there cutting up through the eastern Russia and north of the Bering Strait. And then by the time we get into Thursday afternoon, here's this weak low. That feature is just going to drift eastward across the Gulf, not be too impactful. It'll have a little rain and some rain showers with it. Here's the next low. This low is going to cross southeastward across the Bering around St. Matthew to near Nunavik Island, and then eventually cut across the Alaska Peninsula by the time we get into Saturday. So by Friday afternoon, that low sitting out in the central Bering with some snow on the north and east side of it, and a little secondary low trying to get organized south of the eastern Aleutians Friday afternoon. We have the weakening low there in the central lower Gulf, and then just kind of this trough that sits over northwest Canada into the eastern interior, and that'll be a focus for some scattered showers. Even be a few isolated flashes of lightning, rumbles of thunder, but that'll provide enough instability Friday afternoon, evening for some scattered showers there in areas of the interior. Thursday morning lows above freezing, upper 30s, low 40s across the Panhandle. Back here through south central, could be a little below freezing Copper River Basin with that ridge of high pressure right overhead. Anchorage bowl temperatures 30s on the east side of town, 40-ish downtown, and then as we go into Thursday afternoon, we're looking for generally 50s in the Panhandle, 50 degrees or so Anchorage Bowl, maybe 60 up there at Gulkana, Glen Allen. Friday morning lows should be just a tad warmer, generally above freezing, 30s to near 40, and temperatures upper 30s to maybe lower 40s in the Panhandle. Temperatures again on Friday, generally mid-50s, upper 50s, could be an isolated 60-degree reading down toward Ketchikan or Metlakatla. Out here across south central, warmest readings will be as you creep up in elevation, Talkeetna 56, 59 over at Glen Allen. Across the interior, temperatures now are generally staying above freezing at night here along the Yukon-Tanana valleys. And we've seen a push of at least a little milder air come northward along the west coast with that front. Daytime highs will get into the 60s, Yukon Flats, Eagle. So this area, Old Crow, will also see warmer temperatures that allow that snow melt to occur and cause that water to run off down the Porcupine River toward Fort Yukon. Temperatures will be around freezing for highs Thursday afternoon across the western and Seward Peninsula, say Nome and Teller and Wales. And then Friday morning lows generally below freezing here in the 20s. North Slope, Arctic Coast, Seward Peninsula, St. Lawrence Island, lower Yukon Delta with readings near 40 at Fairbanks and Fort Yukon. And temperatures come Friday afternoon, warmest about 65, 66 there at Fort Yukon, in the lower 60s, Fairbanks on over toward Eagle. Whereas temperatures will get a little above freezing there at Nome. And again, it's been a cool spring here along the west coast and in through the southwest. Thursday morning lows will be near or just below freezing here along the lower Yukon Delta, mid-upper 30s along the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians. And then for Thursday afternoon, we should get temperatures in the 40s. The Aleutians on up along the Alaska Peninsula, and as you creep up from Bethel on up toward McGrath may flirt with 50 or so, but otherwise cool 30s, mid-30s here along the lower Yukon coast. And lows Friday morning could get back down a bit below freezing across the southwest interior, upper 20s along the coastline, mid-30s, mid to upper 30s there for the Alaska Peninsula on out through the Aleutians. And then afternoon highs on Friday should generally be in the mid-40s or so along the Aleutians up in through the Alaska Peninsula, 48 Kodiak City, but 39 or so at Eamonnok. And it's just, again, rather cool temperatures will persist in this region. And unfortunately, I don't have really much of a change here coming up as we lead into Memorial Day weekend. Looks like temperatures could average below normal, will likely average below normal here across the southwest mainland, northern parts of the Alaska Peninsula, centered on the lower Yukon Basin. Temperatures may average a little above normal along the Arctic coast north slope, extending down perhaps in time. I'm just going to go a little beyond. As we head toward early June, we could see ridging develop in this portion of Canada and the Panhandle, which would bring considerably warmer temperatures to southeast Alaska, nudging on up along the Alcan border and into areas of the North Slope, Eastern Brooks Range. That's what could really precipitate further significant snowmelt here out of northwest Canada coming down the Porcupine River. So again, stay tuned to later forecast here as we get several more days into this trend, but overall, cooler temperatures are going to prevail across areas of the southwest, and precipitation will likely average the greatest likelihood with weather systems coming in off the Bering, southwest southerly flow. We expect the west side of the state could have the greatest potential for precipitation to average above normal here leading up to Memorial Day weekend, with drier than normal conditions here across the Panhandle. So again, this is just a continuation of a pattern we've been here much of the month of May.